They say love makes you blind, but no one tells you what happens when you finally open your eyes and realize you were never the only one. I didn't just get cheated on. I didn't just get lied to. I built a whole relationship with a man who already belonged to someone else. And the worst part, I didn't find out after a few weeks or a few months. I found out after 2 years. My name is Sophia, and this isn't just a story about betrayal. This is a story about deception, about denial, and about what happens when the life you thought was real turns out to be someone else's reality. Because I wasn't just in love. I was invested. Emotionally, mentally, completely. And I had no idea. I was living inside a lie. I met him at a networking event. It wasn't romantic at first. No sparks. No instant connection. Just a conversation that felt easy. His name was Michael. He wasn't overly charming. Didn't try too hard. Didn't say all the right things. But somehow, that made him feel real. Safe, like someone I didn't have to question. We talked for a while that night. Then he asked for my number. Nothing pushy. Nothing dramatic. Just simple. And I liked that. Because at that point in my life, simple felt like peace. He started calling me. Not texting. Calling. And that stood out to me. Because in a world where everyone hides behind messages, he showed up with his voice, his presence. We talked about everything. Work, family, life. He remembered things. Small things. The kind of details people usually forget. And slowly, without realizing it, he became part of my routine. Morning calls, late-night conversations, random check-ins. And at some point, it stopped feeling like effort. It just felt normal, like he had always been there. One night, we were talking longer than usual. The conversation got quiet. Not awkward, just still. And then he said something that changed everything. I don't want something casual with you. I want something real. And I remember pausing, because those words meant something to me. They weren't just words. They were intention. Or at least, that's what I thought. So I let my guard down. Completely. Because when someone tells you they want something real, you don't expect them to be living something fake. Looking back now, there were signs. Small ones. Easy to ignore. He was always busy on certain days. Weekends especially. He didn't like spontaneous visits. Everything had to be planned, structured, controlled. At the time, it didn't feel suspicious. It felt responsible, like he had his life together. And I respected that, so I didn't question it, even when I should have. Because the truth is, when something feels good, you don't go looking for problems. You protect the feeling. You explain things away. You make excuses for things that don't fully make sense. Because accepting the truth means risking everything you've built. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. It wasn't one big moment. It wasn't one clear sign. It was a pattern. A feeling. Something that kept whispering in the back of my mind. This isn't complete. But I ignored it. Because nothing was wrong enough to walk away. Nothing was clear enough to confront. So I stayed. And I trusted him. Fully. Until one day, something small happened. Something so simple, most people wouldn't even notice it. That moment, that one detail, started unraveling everything. Because sometimes it's not the big lies that expose the truth. It's the small ones that don't match. And that was the beginning of the end. I didn't notice it immediately. That small detail. At first, it didn't feel important. Just something slightly off. Easy to ignore. Easy to explain away. Because when you trust someone, you don't look for reasons to doubt them. You look for reasons to believe them. It happened on a random afternoon. Nothing special. Nothing dramatic. I was on my phone, scrolling without thinking, when I saw it. A name I had never seen before. At first, I didn't react, because it could have been anything. Work, a friend, something normal, something harmless. But something about it didn't feel harmless. It wasn't the name itself. It was the way it appeared. The timing. The pattern. I had called him earlier that day. No answer. He said he was busy. Meetings, he told me. Back to back. But that same time. That same exact time. This name showed up. Active. Online. Connected to him. And suddenly, that small detail didn't feel small anymore. I stared at my phone for a long time. Not because I didn't understand what I was seeing, but because I didn't want to. Because once you see something clearly, you can't unsee it. So I did what most people do. When the truth feels uncomfortable, I ignored it. I told myself I was overthinking, that I was creating problems that didn't exist, that I needed to trust him. Because that's what love is, right? Trust. But something inside me didn't settle. It stayed there, quiet, but persistent, like a voice I couldn't silence anymore. So later that night, I did something I had never done before. Something I told myself I would never do. I checked. Not dramatically, not obsessively, just enough. Enough to confirm or deny what I was starting to feel. And what I found wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious. It wasn't a clear confession. It was worse. It was patterns. Repeated ones. Same name. Different days. Same time frames. Same busy excuses. And suddenly, everything started connecting. The weekends he was always unavailable. The missed calls. The delayed replies. The controlled schedule. It wasn't responsibility. It wasn't structure. It was separation. Two lives. Carefully managed. Carefully hidden. And I was only seeing one side of it. I felt my chest tighten. But I still didn't cry. Not yet. Because part of me was still holding on. Still hoping. There was another explanation. Something I was missing. Something that would make this less real. So I decided to ask him. Not aggressively. Not emotionally. Just calmly. Who is she? There was a pause. A small one. But I felt it. And in that pause, everything I needed to know was already there. Who is who? He replied. Too quick. Too casual. Too controlled. And that's when I knew. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't misunderstanding. This was something he had practiced hiding. I didn't push. Not immediately. Because now, it wasn't about what he would say. It was about what he wouldn't. And silence can tell you more than words ever will. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I didn't have answers, but because I finally had too many. Every memory started changing. Every moment, every conversation, every I'm busy, every I'll call you later. They all meant something different now. And the scariest part, I still didn't know the full truth. I only knew one thing. There was someone else. And whatever this was, it was bigger than I thought. Way bigger. And deep down, I felt it. This wasn't just going to hurt. This was going to change everything. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I couldn't, but because my mind refused to rest. Every small detail, every moment I ignored, every excuse I accepted, started replaying in my head. But this time, they didn't feel the same. They felt connected, like pieces of something I was never supposed to see clearly. And the more I thought about it, the harder it became to ignore one truth. This wasn't new. Whatever was happening had been happening for a long time. I just didn't notice. Or maybe I chose not to. Because sometimes the truth doesn't hide from you. You hide from it. The next morning, everything felt different. Not outside. The world looked the same. People were still moving, still living, still smiling. But inside me, something had already shifted. I wasn't confused anymore. I was aware. And awareness changes everything. I didn't text him that morning. Not like I usually would. No, good morning. No checking in. No pretending. Just silence. Not as a reaction, but as a decision. Because I needed to see something clearly. Without interference. Without distraction. Without him controlling the narrative. Hours passed. And then, my phone buzzed. His name. I stared at it. And for the first time, I didn't feel excited. I felt observant. Like I was no longer inside the relationship, but outside it, watching it. Hey, I was busy earlier. I'll call you later. Same tone, same pattern, same script. And that's when it hit me. He wasn't lying differently. He was lying consistently. And consistency means practice. I didn't reply. Not because I was playing games, but because something inside me needed more than words now. It needed proof. Real proof. So later that day, I made a decision. I wasn't going to ask him again. I wasn't going to wait for answers. I was going to see for myself. And that decision changed everything. That evening, he told me he was busy again. Same excuse, different day, but this time, I didn't stay where I was. I moved, quietly, carefully, without overthinking, because now, this wasn't about emotions anymore. This was about truth. I followed the pattern, the same time he always disappeared, the same window he was never available, and somehow, I already knew where to go. Not logically, but instinctively. Like my body had already figured it out, before my mind was ready to accept it. When I got there, I paused. Not because I was scared, but because I knew. Once I saw it, there would be no going back. No denial. No confusion. No, maybe. Just truth. Clear, final, unavoidable. I took a step forward. And then, I saw him, not alone, standing close to her, closer than strangers stand, closer than friends stand, comfortable, familiar, like that space between them had always existed, like I had never been part of it. They were laughing. And that sound, that simple sound, felt louder than anything I had ever heard, because I had heard that same laugh before, with me, and now it didn't belong to me anymore. Or maybe it never did. I stood there, not moving, not reacting, just watching, because sometimes the truth doesn't hit you like an explosion. Sometimes it settles slowly, like something heavy, dropping into place. And in that moment, everything made sense. The distance, the lies, the patterns, the silence. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't bad timing. It wasn't stress. It was choice. He didn't lose me. He managed me. And that realization changed something inside me instantly. Not loudly, not dramatically, just permanently. I didn't confront him. Not there. Not in that moment. Because there was nothing left to ask. Nothing left to confirm. Nothing left to fix. I already had my answer. And for the first time, it didn't come from his words. It came from what I saw. And what I saw was undeniable. I turned around and walked away. Not because I was strong, but because I finally understood something. Staying would only hurt more than leaving. And as I walked away, I felt it. Not relief, not peace. Something else. Clarity. Painful, but clear. Because now I knew I wasn't the only one. I was the hidden one. And that changes everything. And for a second, everything paused. Not emotionally, just mentally. Like my mind was checking something. Comparing who I was then to who I used to be. Because I remembered what his name used to do to me. The excitement, the anticipation, the attachment. But this time, it felt different. There was no rush, no reaction, no pull, just awareness. And that's when I knew I wasn't the same person anymore. Because the same thing no longer had the same effect. And that's what growth looks like. Not loud, not obvious, but undeniable. I didn't open the message immediately. Not because I was playing games, but because I finally understood something simple. Access is a privilege, and not everyone deserves it anymore. Especially not someone who showed you what it feels like to be an option. I sat there, looking at his name on my screen, and for the first time, I wasn't wondering what he would say. I was deciding if I even cared. And that moment, that quiet, simple moment, told me everything I needed to know. I had moved on. The second message came minutes later. Longer, more intentional. I've been thinking about you. I know I messed up. I just want to talk. And just like that, the past tried to reopen itself. I stared at the screen. Once, twice, again. Not because I didn't understand what he was saying, but because I was trying to understand something else. Why someone who once let me go so easily was now trying so hard to come back. And in that moment, I realized something I didn't expect. He didn't come back because I needed him. He came back because I no longer needed him, because I had become someone he could finally recognize, but no longer reach. Years ago, this message would have meant everything to me. It would have pulled me back in, made me forget the pain, made me question my growth. But now, it felt different. Quiet, neutral, distant. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was observing. And that was new. I picked up my phone, stared at his message, and for a moment, I thought about replying. Not because I wanted him back, but because I wanted closure, answers, a final conversation. But then I understood something simple. Closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you, from accepting what happened, without needing an explanation, without needing an apology, without needing them to understand the damage they caused. Because sometimes people know exactly what they did. They just didn't think you would walk away from it. I looked at his message one last time, and then I finally replied. Not emotionally, not angrily, just honestly. I'm not the same person you left. I wish you well, but there's nothing here for you anymore. I read it again, not to change it, but to feel it, to make sure. It came from who I am now, not who I used to be. Then I sent it. No hesitation, no second thoughts, just clarity. He replied almost instantly, like he had been waiting, typing, stopping, typing again. Long messages, explanations, apologies, trying to rebuild something that no longer existed. But I didn't read everything. I didn't need to, because for the first time, I wasn't looking for meaning in his words anymore. I had already found it, in my silence. So I put my phone down, and I let it be. No arguments, no explanations, no reopening old wounds. Just peace, real peace. The kind that doesn't come from everything being okay, but from finally choosing yourself when it matters the most. And as I sat there, in that quiet moment, I realized something I wish I had known earlier. Losing him was never the tragedy. Losing myself would have been, because sometimes the person who walks away from you is the same person who teaches you how to stand on your own. And sometimes the greatest glow up isn't what people see on the outside. It's the strength you build when no one is watching. He came back when I became everything he said I couldn't be. But by then, I no longer needed him to see it, because I had already seen it for myself. And that was my second chance.